Good morning, everyone. My question is to you, Ms. Moore. In the last estimates, I asked you about accelerated non-renounceable issues. I raised the issue that they were unfair to small shareholders, and I said to you it's the institutional shareholders who get inside running, and you replied you didn't agree that anyone gets the inside running. In fact, we monitor these markets, every transaction and every order, day in, day out. If someone is getting the inside running, we're onto that straight away, so I don't agree with that premise. Well, I'd have to say to you, I think you're wrong, because what we've just seen in the last month is an accelerated non-renounceable issue made to Bank of Queensland shareholders. There are a lot of things wrong with that issue. Number one was that institutional shareholders were given $350 million up front at $7.35, so that currently the BOQ share price is $8.46. So they've been given a $1 discount there straight up for non-existing shareholders. So small shareholders have had their property rights and voting rights diluted, number one. The second problem was the board also unveiled a $1 billion 1.3 entitlement for existing shareholders, but that was also non-renounceable, meaning that non-participants were diluted without compensation, and they're in the money entitlements. So anyone you get, any of these shares you buy at $7.35, you can turn around and sell at $8.50, were given away to clients of underwriters UBS and Goldman Sachs. So why is it that the Australian Securities Investment Commission is protecting the big end of town, foreign banks, at the expense of small shareholders who are only given 8 days to basically complete the offer and return it? Now, you can say, it's Australia's Post fault, but that's not fair, because it also takes time to liquidate other shares if you need to find money for that capital raising. When I first started off, in the stock market back in the late 80s, all share issues were renounceable offers, and everyone were given their entitlements in accordance with their pro-rated shareholding. So what are you going to do about fixing the rort and the racket that the big end of town are constantly screwing the little guy, especially in regards to Bank of Queensland?
So, Senator, thanks for your question. I guess from my perspective, I don't agree with the emphasis on the concern that there's some sort of rort. I think it's important.
Well, I don't know how you could disagree with it. I mean, they've been giving in-the-money shares without any consultation to the shareholders. They weren't given enough.
In capital raisings, there are a number of interests. There are obviously the interests of existing shareholders, whether they be large shareholders or small shareholders. But they're not the only interests. And we think it's very important that directors of a company have the flexibility to consider what is the company's needs at the time. And that means considering, as you say, the interests of their retail shareholder base, but also what is the company's needs. And in circumstances where a company may have an acquisition underway and an urgent need to get capital in place.
There was nothing urgent about it. It didn't have to be urgent.
That in circumstances where a directors form a view that they need to acquire, they need capital for a specific purpose within a time frame, there is value in them having the flexibility to do that. What we asked of the directors is that they consider the fairness of their approach to capital raising to all shareholders. And in this case, the entitlement offer for retail shareholders was not taken up by all the retail shareholders.
That's because they didn't get their offer in time. Hundreds of shareholders didn't actually get their offer.
One of the issues, which I think would be a fabulous issue for us to look at together, is whether there are opportunities under the law for us to provide more efficient ways of communicating with shareholders, so that people are able to get material out in electronic form and information available to them quickly. I think that's something.
One more question, Chair. Yeah. Mr. Shipton, if you had a rental property and you asked a rental agent to look after it for 12 months, and you came back in 12 months' time and you found out that rental agent had sold your property, 25% of your rental property, for 20% below market value without asking you, would you be happy about that?
Senator, it's difficult. It's a moot question, and I'm
It's not a moot question. It's about property rights and voting rights.
Yes, but it's a scenario that I want to be careful about. Yes, but of course, of course, in that scenario, I think anybody would be disappointed.
Yeah, so the law is immoral. We need to fix the law because it's destroying property rights of small shareholders who are the
Senator,
genuine capitalists.
Under the law at the moment, the property, what you've described as property rights, isn't a property right, and I think that's the issue you're raising.
Well, if I own 5% of a company, I should be able to exercise 5% of the voting rights, and if I hold 5% of the equity, and there's a capital raising done, I'm entitled to 5% of the new equity.
No, you're not. You're not under the law as it is.
Yeah, I know you're not under the law, but it's not right.
But Senator, if I could just reinforce what my colleague just said about communication and the use of technology, I think that is something that all of us need to look at, including market participants, as to how to improve communications in these swift and time-constrained offerings and maximise the use of instantaneous electronic technological communication.
Do we need to look at the club? You know, the boys' club that basically, you know, looks after each other, UBS, Goldman Sachs, industry super funds, all these guys that effectively just have a club. It's a Melbourne club, let's be frank about it, Melbourne-Sydney club. The rest of Australia's left behind, where you just shovel money into each other's pockets with, you know, shareholders, whether it be members, superannuation members' money. I mean, because that's what this is. Why UBS and Goldman Sachs had to underwrite such a small offer is breathtaking. I mean, it was like, oh, well, we'll give a bit to you and we'll give a bit to you. I mean, you know, it's like you're supposed to be looking after the little guy against the corruption in these big organisations.
So in these capital raisings, the underwriters are actually the agents of the company. They're not the agents of the shareholders. So that's
exactly right.
Yeah,
but the company is the shareholders.
Well,
That's the thing. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll leave it like as that.
Yeah.
Thank you.